Hi everyone, this video will be discussed about role of nutrition in sports. So, we will start with introduction. What is sport nutrition? Sports nutrition is the practical application of nutrition knowledge to a daily eating schedule that provides the energy for physical activity, aids in the recovery process after strenuous exercise, and helps athletes perform well in competitive events. After that, the significance of sport nutrition. Firstly, nutrition is crucial for athletes because it supplies the energy needed to carry out the exercise. Strength, training, performance, and recovery are all impacted by what they eat. Prior to a game or match, an athlete needs to pay great attention to what, when, and how much he eats and drinks. Secondly, prior, during and post the sport, proper nutrition must be accessible. The best foundation for success in any sport is ensured by appropriate nutrition, muscle growth, and the recovery process. The human body needs 6 nutrients to produce energy, develop tissues, maintain body function, and defend off deficiencies and degenerative diseases. These nutrients are found in food and beverages. They are characterized as important nutrients. They consist of carbohydrates, proteins, fats, vitamins, minerals, and fluid. The body needs certain nutrients to function effectively, but it is unable to produce them on its own in the levels required on a daily basis.
Firstly, we are going to talk about carbohydrates and fiber. There are 7 types of carbohydrates. Monosaccharides consist of glucose, fructose, and galactose, which are the most basic form of carbohydrates. Next is disaccharides, consisting of sucrose, maltose, and lactose. Polysaccharides, which are plant starch. Other carbohydrates include sorbitol and ribose. These components are very useful in keeping the body ready for exercise. Fiber is a part of carbohydrate as it can be abundantly found in food that contains this nutrient. As for soluble fiber, it is important to keep blood sugar and cholesterol at its optimum level. Insoluble fiber helps in bowel movement, while resistant fiber helps in keeping the bacteria in the gut in check. The percentage of recommended carbohydrates in sports ranges from 45% to 65% of total calories per day. It is suggested that a minimum of 300 grams of carbohydrates must be consumed in order to improve performance in sports. Increasing the amount of carbohydrates can be done in order to accommodate the individual needs in doing sports. Furthermore, it is recommended to consume 25 grams of fiber per day. Carbohydrates can be utilized anaerobically and aerobically, which includes during high-intensity anaerobic exercise such as weightlifting or aerobic exercises such as running. It is also useful during prolonged aerobic exercise such as walking and intermittent high-intensity exercise such as circuit training with repetitions. This shows that sports performance can be further improved during prolonged and highly intense exercises. The carbohydrates ingested can also optimize the replenishment of both liver and muscle glycogen. Lastly, carbohydrates which are already converted to glycogen can aid in preventing fatigue during exercises that use glycogen as main source of energy.
Protein is one of our most essential nutrients for optimal health. Additionally, it has a wide variety of physiological functions that are essential to optimal physical performance. The basic form of protein in the body is amino acid, or so-called amines, a complex chemical structure that is made up from the base of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen with its functional group consisting nitrogen and hydrogen. What constructs an amino acid is the combination of an amino group with an acid group. These amines are divided into 2 categories, the essential amino acids and the non-essential amino acids. The recommendation dietary allowance suggested that there are 9 essential amino acids that are needed for the average adult, while non-essential amines can be obtained readily from the body. Protein works the foundation of repair and maintenance of skin, hair, and most importantly, muscle tissue cells. So here comes the big question: how much protein is needed? According to the recommended dietary allowance, 0.8 grams per kilogram per body weight per day is suggested for the average adult. However, athletes will require a slightly higher amount to cater for their energy expenditure. So these are a few examples of good sources of dietary protein. What makes them good sources of protein is the food containing low amounts of fats, so lean sources of protein are the ones you should put in your palate. Now let's dive into the role of protein in sports nutrition and its impacts towards athletes. As said earlier, the major function of dietary protein is to build and repair tissues. Young athletes require more protein intake compared to adults, especially during rapid growth phases. Consuming adequate protein would facilitate and produce more tissues as the body needs. Protein is also needed for hormone balance such as insulin. Generally, people acknowledge the function of insulin is to regulate blood sugar levels, but what many are not aware of is that insulin is an anabolic hormone that shuttles protein to muscles during recovery. Hence, it is necessary to consume protein post-exercise as it increases muscle protein synthesis as it is extremely beneficial for muscle recovery process. One of the things that many people are unaware of is the fact that when sufficient protein is taken, it helps produce more antibodies, thus help battle infections and viruses. As athletes often train, their bodies are more susceptible to diseases and injuries, thus good dietary protein intake can aid our immune system by reducing inflammations and keeping us strong. Among the common goals of athletes are to become leaner and stronger. The benefit of having adequate protein in your diet is the thermic effects of food. It takes 30% more energy for the body to break down protein than carbs and fat, so it improves metabolism, thus increases metabolic rate by prolonging satiety. Then, we move to fat. Dietary fat can be classified into 4 types, which are saturated. Saturated fats, sometimes called bad fats, which contribute to the risk of cardiovascular diseases such as heart disease and stroke, because they increase blood LDL cholesterol levels. Monounsaturated and polyunsaturated. When saturated fats are replaced in the diet with monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats, which known as good fats, blood LDL cholesterol tends to decrease. Trans. They are more likely to be harmful than saturated fats because they also tend to reduce HDL, good cholesterol. For recommended fat in sports is 20 to 35% of total energy intake. Then, role of fat in sports performance. For moderate to moderate intensity activity, fat acts as the primary fuel source. Although it does not supply the quick bursts of energy required for speed, fat is an important metabolic fuel for muscles during endurance exercise and serves a number of vital functions in the body. Before fat to be used as the body's main energy source, it must first be break down and transport to muscles. Accessible. The best foundation for success in any sport is ensured by appropriate nutrition, muscle growth, and the recovery process. Then, we proceed with vitamins and minerals. Vitamin can be divided into 2 groups, which are fat-soluble, which is vitamin A, D, E and K, and water-soluble, which are vitamin B and C. In terms of sport performance, vitamin involved in processing the carbohydrates and fats for the production of energy, forming hemoglobin for the oxygen delivery to the muscles, and is the antioxidants. A deficiency of the vitamin may impair the performance of sport, as the symptoms such as weakness or physical fatigue would certainly be counterproductive to optimal performance. The recommendations intake of each vitamins is different. Generally, male is recommended for higher amount than female, while those younger than adults will have slightly lower amount of the vitamin intake. As example, vitamin C intake recommended for male is 90 mg per day while female is 75 mg per day. Minerals then are needed to perform 2 of 3 major function of nutrients in food, which are the formation of several body tissues and the regulation of physiological processes. The intake of calcium is differ depending on the age of an individual. The deficiency intake of calcium associated with the involvement of bones disease. Impaired bone health would impact the sport performance. Bone health is actually one of the major concern of female athlete triad. As for the iron, adequate intake is important as iron is critical for the oxygen energy system. This is because low iron level or anemia will limit the oxygen delivery to the exercising muscle and affect the performance. Last but not least, fluid. Fluid, particularly water, are also an important nutrients. The sport performance can be affected by what type of fluid, how much the amount of fluid, and when the fluid is taken. Fluid can help in the regulation of body temperature, replace the sweat losses during exercise. Proper hydration requires fluid intake before, during and after the exercise or activity. This is because dehydration can negatively affect the sport performance and put the risk for heat exhaustion or heat stroke. So, that's all.
We will start
Thank
with
you.
introduction.